I think it would be, a great service to the audience, Frank, for us just to really, and really for you, to unpack kind of like, I think a lot of people understand and have at least heard of like a ketogenic diet. Like that
Yeah, we
term
need to
is,
back.
yeah, that term has been thrown around so often, right? Ketogenic diets, ketosis. A lot of people kind of have their own kind of like preconceived notions of what a ketogenic diet is, like what it does to the body for better or for worse. And, unfortunately, like we kind of had like this group like in around maybe like the 2015, 2016 like years where like it was like really starting to boom and like great science and research was coming out about it. And then all of a sudden it was like these big corporations started taking over kind of the name of keto and it became really commercialized and then kind of just went a little bit down the drain for on that end. So maybe we should kind of even just take a step back and clarify, like when we're talking
Yeah,
about this idea of ketones, like what are we even referring to?
right. So super high level, a ketogenic diet, just 30 seconds, is a super high fat, low protein, very low carbohydrates. You're basically starving your body of carbohydrates, so it makes your body burn your own fat reserves. And when you burn fat, it makes something called D-beta hydroxybutyrate, otherwise known as ketones. So your body is burning your own fat to make ketones when you're on the ketogenic diet. So a lot of people use it for weight loss, but they also use it for mental performance. And it's a lot trickier for sports performance being in a ketogenic diet. Some people are able to figure it out, but it's really tough because there's still this feeling that people need, carbs are king.
Mm-hmm.
They need carbs. I'm trying to say, well, if carbs are kings, then the ketones are the emperor. But
Right.
um, what the product that we have is what's called an exogenous ketone. So instead of endogenous, where the body makes it inside the body, exogenous ketones is when you drink ketones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a very big misunderstanding with getting into ketosis, and we never advertise this, but all of our competitors do. That there's two ways to define in ketosis. Normally, when you do a ketogenic diet, your body burns fat and you make ketones, and you can actually test your blood, not your urine strips. Don't use those. And the breath meters are okay, but it won't work for exogenous ketones. But when you test your blood, it shows that there's ketones floating in your blood. So that some people define ketosis as your body burning fat, and some define it as ketones floating around in your blood. Well, the confusing part is when you drink exogenous ketones, so ours is made out of D-beta hydroxybutyrate and 1,3-butanediol, and there's other ketones that we can go into in a second. But when you drink it, it actually skips and bypasses that fat burning stage and puts ketones into your blood. But many companies say, oh, you're now in ketosis because it's just a shorter, 5-word Google ad, clickbait.
Yes, clickbait is exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah, people will buy it if they're like, "Oh, I'm trying to get into ketosis. Let me just take this
Right.
shot or whatever."
So the advertising company is saying get into ketosis, and their asterisk is ketones in your blood, but the consumer hears burning fat. So
Yeah,
they literally think that they're drinking this drink and it's burning fat for them. It's like, no, it's stopping that. And
right.
if you drink huge amounts of it, it could even, it could stop your body from burning fat, because if you're sitting on the couch and you've been fasted for a day and you're burning fat and suddenly you drink some calories that, raise your ketones even more, what incentive is there for your body to make more ketones? Like,
Yeah,
none.
yeah. So it's
So,
basically saying like the body kind of interprets it as like, "Oh, well, we're already like we have plenty of this around. Why do I need to
right.
continue the production here?"
Right. So exogenous ketones is this umbrella of drinking ketones. The first product that came out was a ketone salt, and racemic at that. And the ketone salt means that they took the D-beta hydroxybutyrate, which is normally an acid, and they added a base, a salt.
Mm-hmm.
Potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium. Some of them say sodium free, but all they do is load up the other three salts. It's all
Right.
still, heavy salt. And they were also what's called racemic, which means that only one half of it was bioavailable. Only 50% of it the body recognizes. So the other part is just excreted out, but it still
P and
has the
L.
salt because the acid is still attached. There's still an acid form of the good side, the D side, or the, ineffective side, the L side. So the salt loads of some of these products were just massive. When I was talking about massive, if you were to take, the equivalent amount of salt compared to, the amount of ketone ester that you took, the massive amount,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be similar to a restaurant shaker of salt, like
Oh,
just grams and, 20, 30 grams. It's just not
well, that's
possible. So with the
appealing.
ketone salts, yeah, you have to take a very little amount, And the feedback that we got was that it helped people initially take the ketone salts when they're entering into a ketogenic diet. And they think that it's a ketones, but there's two tricks. One trick is most of the companies will load it up with caffeine. So you think that you're feeling great during your keto flu, because backing up, when you enter into a ketogenic diet, your body runs out of glucose, and your body also excretes a whole bunch of water, because every molecule of glucose is held onto a molecule of water. You lose your glucose, water rushes out of you. People love the diet because they lose 5 pounds in 4 days, but it's water. It doesn't really count, and then they get demotivated after it flattens out. But with that water, you lose massive amounts of salt. So much salt depletion that my wife, the first time, she was my guinea pig, she was in a fetal position in bed crying, headache, heart racing, and like she had what's called the keto flu. And I called up some experts, and they said to give her like 10 to 15 salt pills. Within 15 minutes, she was fine. I even know another 90-year-old lady whose doctor told her to do the ketogenic diet, but didn't give her enough information. She was rushed to the hospital a couple of days later, and I said, I can tell you what the problem was. She said, how can you tell me? I was in the hospital for 2 or 3 hours with a couple of doctors that were from Harvard, and they couldn't figure it out. And I said, it was salt depletion. You didn't tell them that you were doing the ketogenic diet, or they didn't know ketogenic diet.
Dude, the keto flu is so real, though. I mean, I remember the first time it hit me. Well, it's especially, too, like if you're going from a like just straight up standard American diet, like that is just chock full of, processed foods, high linoleic acid, and then sugar, obviously, like a lot of sugar. And then you go from a standard American diet to like a true ketogenic diet that's really low in carb, high in fat, and moderate in protein. Like it will rock your socks off. Luckily for me, I kind of had like the paleo transition. Like I was paleo and then went to ketogenic diet. And then for me, like it still hit me. But I watched my wife, who was like standard American, like go into ketosis. And for her, it's been one of the best things in the world because she has a lot of glycemic variability, and she's going to listen to this and kill me for talking about it. But people know about it because I've talked about it before on the podcast. But for her, like going from like the standard American diet to the ketogenic diet was one of the best things in the world she could have done. But man, it rocked her world. And so we actually supplemented with some like, some different mineralization. One is like Kenton, which is like a sea plankton bloom, like mineral water. And like for her, it was really helpful, but it can get you. So people who are listening to this podcast, if you're like doing a standard American diet and you decide to go like ketogenic or like low carb, even low carb, but truly ketogenic, like, you might get your socks knocked off. So just be aware. Thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you. And the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.